Ben Grimm knew he was a gloomy Gus by nature, and this Battleworld place wasn't doing his mood any good. After the battle, it almost magically found a base large enough to house them all, even the prisoners. Ben drifted through the place while everyone else was doing, well, whatever they were doing. It was late at night, and most of them were probably asleep. Ben wasn't sleeping so well, and there wasn't even a Mets game on to distract him. Battleworld didn't have any TV sets that got New York stations. The base was so big, he could wander for weeks and not even see half of it. There were hangars, garages, a little factory, and all kinds of giant mechanical stuff down in the lower levels. A bit higher up were labs, floors and floors of labs. That part of it was like Reed's nerd hideaway in the Baxter building, only times 100, and with tech that none of them had ever seen. Still, the brainiacs in the group were already starting to figure it out. Living quarters took up the upper floors, except for a big meeting area all the way up top, with windows all around. All in all, Ben thought, it wouldn't have been a bad place if it had been back on Earth, instead of out here on the hind end of nowhere. He didn't know what to do with what the Beyonder had said. No way was he going to just go kill a bunch of people no matter what. His fondest wish, other than not being a big ugly walking mess of orange rocks, was to return home to Alicia Masters. He'd found love with the blind sculptress, but he wasn't worthy of her. Most of the time, he figured she just pitied him. But the one time he'd mentioned that to Sue Richards, she looked like she wanted to smack him.
You're pitying yourself. Don't put that on Alicia.
Which was fair enough, Ben thought. That was one more thing he had to figure out.
I wasn't even wearing my uniform, but when I got here...
Ben turned a corner and saw Reed and Cyclops having a conversation. They were on a balcony overlooking the planet's landscape of trees shaped like giant mushrooms adorned with dangling balls hanging from vines, like a forest of party hats. Little bird-like things, or maybe they were more bug-like, were coming and going from the hanging spheres. On the ground, vines slithered around like snakes, making themselves into nests where the little flying critters laid eggs. And that was just right outside this part of the balcony. Ben hadn't seen too much of Battleworld, but what he had seen was enough to convince him that most of the worlds in the galaxy had to be real weird.
Interesting. Xavier said he wasn't sitting in his wheelchair at the moment he was brought here, and then he was in it when we arrived.
Not for very long.
If that was his deepest wish, then he won't need to slay any enemies, will he?
You think that's what happened?
What? That Xavier wished himself out of the wheelchair? I don't know, Scott. What do you think?
I'm not sure.
Try this out. It seems to me that the Beyonder changed us a little when he brought us here, removed what he sees as weaknesses, so we would be at our best to face each other. Ben, you look exhausted. You should get some rest.
Shut-eye ain't on the agenda tonight, I don't think. Looks like it's not for you either.
We're just trying to figure out what the Beyonder is up to, like everyone else.
Yeah, but you got a lot more brains to work with than most of us, Reed. Give us the short version when you got it figured out, so we can all get our fondest wishes. Good night.
He walked off down another hall, thinking about his fondest wish. It was still what it had been since the moment cosmic rays had scrambled up his genome. He wanted to be normal. But he wouldn't be any good to the Fantastic Four if he was normal. Then he'd just be Ben Grimm from Yancey Street.
Careful what you wish for.
Still, maybe normal blue-collar Ben Grimm would be worthy of Alicia.
What if we never get back, you know? I mean...
Cut it out. The Fantastic Four have been in a lot of crazy cosmic situations. That's how we became the FF in the first place, remember? We'll handle it, and we'll get back, no sweat.
Johnny Storm and Spider-Man were hanging out in a large room outside the living quarters. Johnny had forgotten one thing, Ben thought. On those missions, they had Susie along. She was the glue that kept them all together. Plus, she could be real handy in a fight. Without her, Ben wasn't sure how the team would handle the first real tough scrap they got into. They'd gone on missions before without all four of them present, but this was something new. Ben would have felt a lot better with Sue along. He thought about joining their conversation, but right then Spider-Man looked up. Except he wasn't looking at Ben.
Something's wrong. Over there.
Peter looked out the huge window and was pointing at the far end of the base. More than a mile from where they stood, light flared from an outlying structure.
That's our base's power plant.
I'll go check it out.
Johnny flew toward a door leading outside to sound the alarm.
Careful, buddy. This is a little bigger than your average mugger.
I can handle it, tough guy. But, hustle, will ya?
Spider-Man swung ahead faster than Ben could keep up. But a lot of the others had seen the giant number 4 Johnny had placed in the sky outside their base. By the time Ben got to the power plant, he was running with most of the Avengers. Spider-Man was already inside. As the team charged into the reactor control room, floating metal fragments wrapped themselves around Spidey, enclosing him, then bouncing him across the floor. The accountable party was obvious.
Ladies and gents, may I present Magneto, Master of Magnetism.
There he is.
Magneto flicked Hawkeye's arrow aside, sending it ricocheting off a panel of machinery.
None of you will touch me.
Magneto spread his arms wide and then brought them together, pulling huge chunks of the walls inward to collapse onto the charging heroes.
Iron Man, She-Hulk, Thing, race the walls!
Ben got under part of one of the walls with Iron Man next to him. Together, they kept the rest of the team from getting squashed, with She-Hulk holding up the other side. But their approach to Magneto was blocked.
The reactor!
Reed waved his arms. Ben was no genius, but he could put 2 and 2 together. Magneto had done something that was going to blow the reactor. It would kill them all.
I got this, Sid. Go get him!
Ben got mad. Maybe not Polk mad. Where was the big green guy anyway? But pretty damn mad. Plowing through the debris, he went after Magneto. Wasp zipped over his head, having shrunk herself small enough that she could find a faster way through the barrier.
The party's not over, Mags. I ain't got my dainty paws on you yet.
Me neither!
Bioelectric energy crackled from Wasp's hands, ready to sting. But Magneto just waved his hand and magnetically tugged together pieces of the walls and machinery, snapping them into a perfect sphere that surrounded and ensnared Wasp. He hesitated a moment, and Ben pushed forward. Then Magneto turned and pulled the imprisoned Wasp in his wake as he flew, but it was slowing him down.
No, you don't.
In a couple of more steps, Ben would be close enough. And that was when he got his fondest wish.
What?
He felt the metamorphosis beginning from the outside in. His field of vision changed as the rocky brows of the Thing receded and became the normal human eyebrows of Benjamin Grimm, the pride of Yancey Street. His hands, outstretched and grasping for Magneto, shrank and became flesh, with 5 fingers again instead of 4. He felt his immense might leaving him, replaced by the ordinary strength of a guy who had always kept himself in shape, but wasn't any superhero. Hair sprouted from his head. He felt the air on his skin. Then fell to his knees, unaccustomed to moving so little mass with such a different center of gravity. He looked up at Magneto, sailing away without a care in the world, Wasp drawn behind him in her metal ball. He'd failed. Wasp was gone. Typical Ben Grimm, he thought. Always coming up just short.
Why now?
He was still sitting on the floor when the rest of the group got through the barrier of wreckage.
Man, what?
Don't ask me, Stretcho. It just happened.
Like when Xavier started walking. Wishes are coming true.
Speaking of Xavier,
Spectrum looped back down to land next to She-Hulk.
I hope everyone noticed that none of the X-Men showed up to fight Magneto. Guess that settles whose side they're on.
Not now, Spectrum. Under control, Reed?
Reed was already examining the reactor.
Now it is.
Good. Now we can focus on solving the problems in front of us, not creating more. We need to find Wasp.
Magneto set the whole thing up so he could get her. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're right, Rhodey. He didn't attack any of us. He just captured her and got out while we were trying to keep the power plant from cycling itself into an overload. What we don't know is why.
So let's go after him and find out. Shouldn't be hard to track him, should it?
We won't know until we try. But that's not our only problem.